On to proficiency. This is sometimes referred to as data literacy, analytic skills, or since the Great Resignation, a retention strategy. Regardless of what we call it, there has to be a baseline user understanding of how to see and understand data. We can depend on early adopters to learn on their own and get us started, but to get everyone up the management chain on board, we have to tailor a proficiency strategy that accompanies different levels of expertise with different learning styles. There are 3 steps to this core capability. The first is curating effective training that resonates and drives impact with users. We bucket that under education. The second is capturing and communicating this impact to justify investment and further participation. We bucket this under measurement. And the third is providing the materials so that users start with best practice rather than learn through already made mistakes. We bucket this under analytics best practice. Let's talk about the first step, education, where we've been spotting a worrying trend. While organizations agree data literacy has never been more important, they are struggling to create satisfactory training programs. The primary obstacle? Organizations are training feature functionality rather than training relevant business outcomes. Let's dig in. Your typical education program uses generic data to teach incrementally more advanced Tableau features until you can eventually call yourself a Tableau ninja, wizard, or Jedi. Don't get me wrong. Superstore is valuable, Tableau features must be learned, and rewarding ninja distinctions makes learning fun. But when the training is not clearly linked to relevant business value, participants will view the training as an extracurricular and get too busy. An effective education program minimizes the gap between training and relevant outcomes. You want your learners to come learn how to do their jobs better, not just to learn Tableau. We break the education framework into 3 pillars. Number 1, define the outcome and who needs to be trained. Number 2, pave their learning paths. And number 3, reward their participation. Let's start by defining the outcome and who needs to be trained. Great news. You've already done this. You outline the desired outcome with your analytic strategy and your needed roles in the operating model. At this point, you're realizing that you'll need to train more than just the content creators to be successful. Business leaders will need training on how to define an analytics vision, server admins to ensure a performant environment, and community leaders on how to best enable their users. These trainings will differ greatly from the trainings needed for content authors, data stewards, and project leaders. So the second pillar is about defining these paths in a scalable way. For less common roles, like server admins and community leaders, send them to learn from external classroom trainings and the broader Tableau community, rather than develop programs from scratch. But for more common roles, like your content authors, external trainings may be prohibitively expensive, so develop a homegrown program. You'll have upfront costs to develop custom material and train trainers, but you'll be rewarded with an accelerator program to run as you see fit. And the third pillar is about motivating participants. We've seen cash prizes, HR badges, championship belts, graduation ceremonies, vouchers for external certifications, or good old-fashioned shoutouts. Whatever it is, align it to what's important at your organization and position your program as a career accelerator. To illustrate, let's look at a customer example. One of our multinational customers had concerns. They had invested heavily in e-learning and classroom trainings in response to the business's requests for more enablement, but were struggling with adoption when it actually came to use these resources. They used the framework to design their own spin on an education program. First, as a prerequisite to any training group, our customer required a desired business outcome to link the training efforts around. This could be done via a leader's value map, a hackathon-style case study, or even a bring-your-own-use case format. Second, also as a prerequisite, they would take the success metrics and other needed fields, do the necessary ETL, and publish them as trusted data sources. This would prevent participants from getting bogged down by dirty data issues. Participants were then asked to pick a capstone project from the white space in our analytics capabilities column and asked how they will add value to the defined outcomes. They were guided along a well-defined learning path combining self-paced e-learning, best practice presentations, use case discussions, knowledge assessments, and office hour support to ensure participants were equipped to complete their capstones. And finally, as a reward, participants were given the stage to present the value of their capstones back to senior business and analytics leadership to get meaningful exposure and feedback. Of course, Tableau feature functionality is a major component of the program, but it is no longer the main attraction. It is simply the vehicle which connects a desired business outcome on the left with realized business impact on the right. Fantastic. You've developed your outcome-driven proficiency program. But after asking your CFO for the resources to create materials and train trainers, you get asked, how will you prove a return on investment into such a program? That's where the second step of proficiency, measurement, comes into play. The key problem: while it's easy to measure the dollars invested in education, it can be tougher to measure the value coming out. And telling your leadership that their investment yielded 100 Tableau ninjas won't always result in the excitement you were looking for. The best practices around measurement focus on articulating the business value of a use case, linking it to your education program, and succinctly communicating that out for others to see. So how do you do this? First, you'll need to create a feedback loop to collect and quantify use cases. Second, you'll need to communicate that impact. Let's start with the feedback loop. In this example, we are looking at a consumer product analytics use case in a regional bank where the team's mission with Tableau was to boost sales productivity and net contribution to the business. We break down the value of this use case into 3 categories. First, software savings. Did the use case reduce spend on old analytics platforms and consulting fees? This team no longer had to rely on the benchmark provider to explore their insights, and they valued those savings at $60,000. Second, productivity gains. Did the use case save users time? Here, analysts reduced the time it took to refresh data from 36 hours across 4 employees down to 45 minutes across 1 employee. This category also includes viewers. Their time to insight was reduced from juggling 6 reports on different platforms down to 1 report in Tableau. This total time savings summed to a collective 2,400 hours and was valued at $138,000. And third, business metric gains. Did the use case move the targeted success metric, which in this case was net contribution to the business? Here, the sales team, now empowered with analytics, were able to add an incremental 360 loans on an annual basis, equating to $15 million in loan originations and $150,000 in net contribution to the business, totaling an estimated benefit for this use case at $348,000. That is one use case finished, and on its own, it's a nice to know. But the true value of measurement comes when you start bundling them and tying them to your specific analytics strategies. Doing so will hammer in the point that not only is your analytics program justifying its own costs, it is also pushing the business agenda forward. And this is key. This message will pivot the value prop of the analytics program from a reactive cost center that can do some cool stuff to a proactive partner necessary to pushing your business forward. Showing the value realized to business leaders to encourage further participation is the next step in measurement. Let's dive into a client example. In this regional bank, the CDO proclaimed the expectation to see a 3 times return on analytics spend. This took their supporting team by surprise as they were left wondering how on earth they were going to show that. First step, they joined their Tableau license data with HR data to break down the cost. Here you can see the total cost of Tableau of $1.5 million, divided by what the centralized team pays and the business pays, and then broken down by business unit. This is not always a necessary step, but it adds context around how much value to expect from specific business units. In this scenario, the teams expected their cost, shown here, times 3 in quantified value. What do we mean by quantified? The next step outlined the process to collect use case value, slotting each use case into one of 3 steps of the process. Every use case starts as collected, which means the use case exists, but the story hasn't been written. Documented means the before and after story has been written, but the estimated value hasn't been confirmed. And quantified is a finished use case, as you saw in the regional banking example before. The centralized team used this workflow to prioritize the discovery and development of use cases. This information was then summarized for leaders to give a holistic view on how analytics was impacting their areas of the business. If you are looking for confirmation of analytics value, you gravitate towards the green, where you can click in to see how analytics is specifically pushing that team forward. However, if you're the owner of the Proficiency program, alternatively, you'd be looking at the gray. Who's not getting the value they should? And how can we accelerate them in the right direction? Looking at the dashboard, we have two obvious candidates. It looks like the warehouse team has yet to get started. And while HR has an early win, they're struggling to transform. This opens the opportunity to position your analytics team as the innovation spark. A little bit of homework will give you an understanding of what HR departments should be doing with analytics. In this HR use case overview, you see HR typically uses analytics to grow diversity and inclusion with transparent diversity reporting and pay gap analysis. They also manage top talent by visualizing their talent pipeline and understanding attrition, so on and so forth. And so now we ask, what of this is your HR team doing? What aren't they doing? If these initiatives are important to your HR leaders, make this the mission of your next education cohort. Now you can revisit that stack of analytics strategies you collected at the beginning. Which strategies have the largest white space? Which rollouts aren't quite taking off as expected? Prioritize them by impact and then position your program as the accelerator the business needs to hit their targets. Fantastic. You've created a viable feedback loop to collect and quantify the value of use cases coming out of your program. You've tied them to specific business analytics strategies to demonstrate past success. And you've created a dashboard to easily share out this information for future stakeholders. Now, you can go back to your CFO, confidently show that your program drives value, and let them know exactly what areas of the business agenda you intend to accelerate with this additional investment dollars.